How I became the villain. And they loved it, the making of the villain. There is a moment in every man's life when he realizes the truth. Not the polite truth, not the socially approved truth, not the version people repeat to stay liked, the real truth. The truth is this: you don't become the villain because you want to. You become the villain because you stop lying to protect other people's comfort. I didn't wake up one day and decide to be dangerous. I didn't aspire to be cold. I didn't want to be misunderstood, feared, or labeled. I became the villain because being good was no longer enough to survive. And the part no one warns you about? Once you stop pretending, once you stop apologizing, once you stop explaining yourself, they don't run from you, they lean in, they respect you, they listen, they follow, they love it. Only continue. If you proved your worth and readiness, if you haven't subscribed as proof of your commitment to yourself and me, then stop now and subscribe and like and lock in. If not, stop and leave. If you don't show a commitment to yourself now by following a simple yet powerful symbolic metaphor, then you're not ready to rebuild yourself and transform, and you're not ready for this, and this wasn't made for you. If you already subscribed and liked the video, you're in the right place at the right time, and this is meant for you, and you will get what you're looking for. I did the same thing and went through the same challenges and damage. We're doing this together. Let's fucking go. I wasn't always this way. There was a version of me that tried to do everything right. I was agreeable. I was understanding. I was patient. I gave people the benefit of the doubt even when it cost me. I explained myself when I didn't need to. I softened my edges so others wouldn't feel threatened. I was what society calls good. And that version of me was eaten alive. Not by enemies, by people who smiled at me, by people who claimed loyalty, by people who said they loved me. Because weakness doesn't invite protection, it invites testing. Every time I chose restraint without authority, someone pushed. Every time I chose kindness without boundaries, someone took more. Every time I chose silence without presence, someone spoke over me. And the more I tried to be understood, the less I was respected. That's when the shift began. Not outwardly, internally. A realization settled in that changed everything. Good men are not rewarded for being good. They are rewarded for being capable. People like to pretend the world runs on morals. It doesn't. It runs on leverage. The people who thrive aren't the nicest. They're the ones who can apply pressure and choose not to. They are calm because they are dangerous. They are quiet because they are decisive. They are respectful because they don't need approval. I didn't understand that at first. I kept thinking, if I just explain myself better, they'll understand. If I stay patient, they'll stop pushing. If I stay calm, they'll appreciate it. They didn't. They escalated. So I changed. The first time someone called me a villain, it surprised me. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed something. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't insulted anyone. I hadn't attacked. All I had done was stop bending. I said no, without explaining. I set a boundary, without apologizing. I walked away, without chasing. And suddenly, I was cold. Different. Hard. A problem. That's when it clicked. They didn't miss the old me. They missed their access to me. The villain label wasn't about my behavior. It was about their loss of control. And once I saw that, I leaned into it. Here's the truth no one says out loud. The villain is often just the man who stopped negotiating his self-respect. The villain is the man who stopped reacting emotionally. The villain is the man who stopped explaining himself to people committed to misunderstanding him. The villain is the man who stopped bleeding in public. And when that happens, something strange occurs. The same people who punished you for being too nice start admiring you for being unmovable. They call it confidence. They call it strength. They call it leadership. But it's the same man. The difference is permission. I didn't become cruel. I became precise. I didn't become heartless. I became disciplined. I didn't become aggressive. I became selective. I stopped giving emotional reactions away for free. I stopped volunteering explanations. I stopped allowing chaos into my inner circle. And something else happened. Something people don't expect. The attention increased. The respect increased. The attraction increased. Because uncertainty is magnetic. When people can't read you, they study you. When they can't predict you, they watch you. When they can't control you, they want your approval. That's when they started saying, "You've changed." They were right. I changed from available to unavailable, from open to guarded, from reactive to observant. And they loved it. Let me be clear about something before we go further. This is not about manipulation. This is not about intimidation. This is not about pretending to be something you're not. This is about alignment. When your words, boundaries, and actions finally match your internal standard, people feel it. You don't have to threaten. You don't have to posture. You don't have to dominate. Your presence does the work. And presence is built through restraint. There's a myth that men become villains because they're broken. The truth? Men become villains because they wake up. They realize being nice didn't keep them safe. Being fair didn't protect them. Being patient didn't earn loyalty, so they stopped playing a rigged role. They stopped trying to be liked by people who never respected them. They accept the cost. And that's the moment everything shifts. I started noticing patterns once I stopped reacting. People revealed themselves faster. Manipulators overplayed their hand. Narcissists exposed their insecurity. Opportunists moved on to easier targets. And the people who mattered? They stayed. They adjusted. They treated me differently. Because boundaries don't repel the right people. They filter the wrong ones. The villain isn't loud. The villain doesn't chase. The villain doesn't beg. The villain doesn't explain his worth. He simply moves on. And when you do that consistently, people feel it in their nervous system. They don't know why they're unsettled. They don't know why they're drawn back. They don't know why your silence bothers them. They just know something changed, and they want proximity to it. I didn't become the villain overnight. It happened gradually. Each time I chose self-respect over approval. Each time I chose silence over reaction. Each time I walked away without closing the door gently. Eventually, the label stuck. And I stopped correcting it. Because the villain label was doing something my explanations never could. It kept the wrong people at a distance. It commanded attention from the right ones. And it gave me peace. Here's what no one prepares you for. When you stop being accessible, people project onto you. They imagine things. They fill in gaps. They tell stories about you. Let them. Mystery is leverage, and the villain always owns the narrative by refusing to argue with it. I didn't become the villain to hurt anyone. I became the villain to stop hurting myself. And once I did, everything stabilized. My decisions got clearer. My circle got smaller. My life got quieter. And my impact got bigger. This is where most men get stuck. They fear the label. They fear being misunderstood. They fear being judged. They fear being called cold, selfish, or heartless. So they stay small. They stay explainable. They stay safe. And they stay powerless. But power doesn't come from being understood. It comes from being respected. And respect is earned when you are willing to be misjudged. That's the price of becoming dangerous in the right way. Here's where most people get it wrong. They think becoming the villain means becoming reckless. They think it means lashing out, burning bridges, going scorched earth. They think it's about anger, bitterness, or revenge. That's not a villain. That's a man who still doesn't have control. The real villain is calm. The real villain doesn't explode. He doesn't rush. He doesn't correct narratives in real time. He doesn't chase closure. He waits. And that patience terrifies people more than rage ever could. Once I accepted the villain label, I stopped fighting it. Not because I wanted to be feared, but because I finally understood what the label actually meant. It meant I had stopped negotiating my standards. It meant I no longer needed people to agree with me in order to move forward. It meant I was no longer available for emotional extraction, and people felt the shift immediately. Here's something uncomfortable but true. Most people don't respect goodness. They respect constraint. They respect the man who could do damage and doesn't. That's why wild men are dismissed, but disciplined men are watched. A man without restraint is predictable. A man with restraint is unreadable. And unreadable men control the room without saying a word. When I stopped reacting, the dynamic flipped. Arguments died on their own. Provocations fell flat. People who thrived on chaos grew restless. They would poke, they would test, they would escalate, and I wouldn't move. No explanation, no defense, no emotional reward. That silence wasn't weakness, it was containment, and containment is power. The irony is this: the moment I became harder to access emotionally, people wanted me more. Not just romantically, psychologically. They wanted my attention, they wanted my approval, they wanted to understand what I was thinking. But I wasn't hiding, I was just no longer broadcasting. And when you stop broadcasting, people lean in. Let's talk about attraction, because this is where people lie to themselves. Attraction isn't created by availability. It's created by self-possession. When you're always explaining yourself, you look uncertain. When you're always reacting, you look controlled. When you're always accessible, you look replaceable. The villain isn't any of those things. He is contained, and containment signals value. This is why people love the villain once he's formed, because he brings order. He doesn't argue feelings. He enforces boundaries. He doesn't demand loyalty. He makes disloyalty expensive. He doesn't seek validation. He removes access. People don't crave chaos. They crave stability. And nothing feels more stable than a man who doesn't flinch. Let me be clear so this isn't misunderstood. This isn't about punishing people. It's about not rescuing them from the consequences of their behavior. Once I stopped doing that, everything aligned. People showed up correctly, or they disappeared. Either way, the problem solved itself. Here's where the monster comes in. Every man has one. The difference is whether he denies it, indulges it, or disciplines it. The monster is your capacity for force, your ability to say no without guilt, your willingness to walk away without regret, your readiness to burn bridges if survival requires it. Men who deny the monster become weak. Men who indulge it become destructive. Men who control it become dangerous in the right way. That's the villain people respect. I didn't kill my monster. I put it on a leash. I trained it. I decided when it would speak and when it would stay silent. That's the difference between chaos and command. There's a reason people test men like this. They want to know where the edge is. They want to know how far they can go. And when you don't react, they keep pushing until they expose themselves. That's when the game ends. Because once someone shows you who they are when they think they have power, you don't need to argue anymore. You just adjust your distance. Distance is the villain's favorite weapon. Not threats, not insults, not dominance displays, distance. Remove access and watch behavior change. People who respected you will respect you more. People who exploited you will panic. People who depended on your reactions will spiral. That reaction tells you everything you need to know. Here's a hard truth most men avoid. If someone only treats you well when you are available, compliant, or reactive, they don't respect you. They tolerate you. The villain doesn't tolerate disrespect. He doesn't explain why it's unacceptable. He simply removes himself from it. This is where peace comes from, not from winning arguments, not from being understood, not from proving your intentions. Peace comes from alignment, your actions finally matching your standards. The villain doesn't chase closure. Closure is for people who need permission to move on. The villain closes doors without ceremony. And when you do that, something unexpected happens. You stop reliving the past. You stop rehearsing conversations. You stop carrying emotional residue. Because unresolved people no longer have access to you. This is what people mean when they say, "You've changed." Yes, I changed from reactive to resolved, from accessible to selective, from explainable to self-contained. And that change didn't make me lonely. It made me free. The final lesson is this: you don't become the villain by being cruel. You become the villain by being unavailable to manipulation. You become the villain by choosing peace over performance. You become the villain by refusing to bleed publicly for people who never protected you. And once you do, they don't hate you. They study you. They adjust to you. They respect you. They love it. Because deep down, people trust men who trust themselves. And nothing signals self-trust like restraint. You don't need to scare anyone. You don't need to dominate rooms. You don't need to prove strength. You just need to stop negotiating your worth. Let them call you the villain. Villains sleep well at night because they finally chose themselves.